Hello and welcome to Behind the Bar. It's lovely to have you with us as we take a look at how to make the Corpse Reviver No. 1 and the Corpse Reviver No. 3 cocktails. If this is your first time watching, then why don't you hit the subscribe button? We've got new episodes every Tuesday, and if you hit the little notification bell as well, then you'll never miss an episode. This video is a follow-on from our Corpse Reviver No. 2 masterclass, which if you haven't seen yet, you can check out here. We featured No. 2 in the masterclass because it's definitely the most popular of the variations, but we also talk about where they come from, so please do check it out. Now, the Corpse Reviver No. 2 is definitely what I would reach for the morning after the night before, but I can see the Corpse Reviver No. 1 coming into its own to revive you from a food coma after a big meal. Both brandy and Calvados have long been regarded as sophisticated digestives, and then mixing them with the stomach-soothing properties of vermouth makes for a smooth and rich sipper. So, what products should you use? So this cocktail is obviously centered around two different kinds of brandy. So you have a traditional one and then your apple brandy as well. So a brandy is a spirit that's produced by distilling wine or cider. So cognac has historically been seen as the benchmark region for this spirit when made from wine grapes. There's also plenty of interesting brandies coming out of different wine producing regions now. For instance, I really love a couple that are coming out of Tasmania here in Australia. I'm using Hennessy because I reckon you get a great flavour value for the price point. The VSOP stands for Very Special Old Pale, which means the brandy has been aged for at least 4 years, whereas VS stands for Very Special and only has to be 2 years old. So you could definitely use a VS from a good quality producer. The end result will just be a little bit less rich. So apple brandy is produced by distilling apple cider, and like with cognac, there's a region of France called Calvados, which has long been producing this style of eau de vie. I love this apple brandy, which comes from Lobo Distillery in South Australia though. It just has a really good spice to it. But basically any Calvados or apple brandy you can get your hands on will add the fruity warmth that we're looking for here. Now, Harry Craddock's Corpse Reviver No. 1 recipe calls for Martini Rosso, and that would certainly work really well here. I've just decided to use Casamariol Negra, which is a Spanish vermouth, basically because it's my favourite, but also because one of the bosses brings it into the country, and if I don't suggest it, I'll be mopping the floors for a week. It's a little bit more savoury and has a lovely nuttiness that comes from walnuts that I think goes really well with the fruity notes from the other ingredients here. So as always, we're going to prepare our garnish first. So you just want to cut a strip of zest off the orange. So you want to get as much of the white pith off as possible. I'll usually just go pretty chunky to begin with and then trim it down afterwards. So we're going to start with 45 mils of brandy, 20 mils of apple brandy, 20 mils of sweet vermouth, now you want to fill your mixing glass with as much ice as you can possibly pack in there. Now we want to stir the cocktail to dilute it and chill it down. This obviously is a pretty boozy number, so it can take a decent little bit of dilution there. Best way is just to pop the back of your bar spoon against the inside of the mixing glass and push the ice around. When you can feel the outside of your mixing glass getting nice and cold, give it a little taste. I reckon it needs a little bit more dilution. Then grab your glass out from the fridge or the freezer. Use your julep strainer to hold the ice back in the mixing glass. So just give your orange zest a little twist over the top so that you get some lovely orange oils over the surface of your drink. And serve the Corpse Reviver No. 1. So now you know. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Corpse Reviver No. 3, but first, I'm going to give this one a taste. See, it's really lovely. It's got a lot of kind of Christmas pudding notes, and I think this particularly pretty punchy apple brandy works really well, just makes it much kind of rounder. But yeah, definitely not something that I think that I would be sipping on at any point before about 10 p.m. in the evening. So the Corpse Reviver number 3 doesn't appear in Harry Craddock's Savoy cocktail book, just in case any of you are sitting there leafing through. But we did think we'd do a fun little bonus make and recreate the Corpse Reviver number 3 as listed in Patrick Duffy's 1956 book Official Mixer's Manual. This is a good 26 years after Harry Craddock's Savoy cocktail book, but the recipes for Corpse Revivers number 1 and 2 are almost the same, and Duffy adds in this third drink. I've never made this before, so let's find out if it's my new fail-safe hangover cure, although I'm not really holding out much hope, to be honest. This recipe is listed in the book as place 1 or 2 ice cubes in a highball glass and add the juice of a quarter lemon, 1 jigger of Pernod and fill with chilled champagne. Stir and serve. So let's give it a try. So we'll start by squeezing some lemon juice. Obviously, Duffy only says a quarter of a lemon, which will vary, but I reckon 20 mils is probably a pretty reasonable estimate for that, so that's how much I'm going to use. Now, a jigger of Pernod, it would generally be taken to be 1 full shot, so 30 mils. I'm going to be a little bit generous here because this is quite a large highball glass, so we're going to go for 45. Obviously, the recipe does call for champagne, which would have to be from France. Working in a Spanish restaurant, I'm going to substitute that in for cava. Cava does get a bit of a bad rap because there was, at least in the UK, quite a lot of not really great quality cava that flooded the market a little bit in the early 2000s. But it is made in the proper traditional method that champagne is made. So if you actually find a good quality cava, it's delicious and has all of the kind of similar notes you would expect from a good quality champagne as well, but at much less of the price. So I'm going to fill it to the top with ice. Obviously the original recipe only called for 1 or 2 cubes, but I'm going to assume that maybe that was because ice was at a little bit of a premium there. And if I don't fill it up with ice and then fill this entirely with cava, then it's going to be a pretty full-on afternoon drink. A pretty interesting shade of green over here. Not gonna lie, I'm really dreading tasting this because absinthe and Pernod are really not my cup of tea, but we'll see how it goes. Luckily, I'm not actually hungover, so the reaction shouldn't be too violent. Tastes like Pernod and sparkling wine. The Corpse Reviver number 3. Probably don't bother. That's really gross.